Hello, it's Rich Rosen, founder and CEO of Fastcall, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about how we use Twilio in our application. So I am logged into Salesforce. This happens to be Classic. We could be looking at Lightning or even Console. This is Salesforce OpenCTI. Here in Classic, it's in the sidebar, but Salesforce OpenCTI sort of controls the phone integration with Salesforce. Fastcall uses Twilio to enable our phone calls and our SMS, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in this video. We use Salesforce OpenCTI as most applications in our category do. We happen to be native, and we are probably one of the very few or only native applications in Salesforce. And I'm going to talk to you about how we use Twilio with our native application. So I mention that because you can have an OpenCTI application that is not native, and most of them would fall into that category, using OpenCTI but not native. In our case, we are native and we use OpenCTI. So I'm gonna get back to Salesforce, but before I talk about what's happening here, I wanted to pop over to Twilio since this is the topic of the demo video. If you're not familiar with the company, Twilio's been around for several years. They're now a public company. They provide a set of software toolkits that enable you to write applications for voice, for SMS, and today more than that. So you'll see here programmable SMS, programmable voice. Fastcall uses both of these things. Twilio itself does not have any end user applications, so you wouldn't come here and say, hey, I'm going to use a phone. You have to write an application, and they give us a set of tools and a programming language called TWIML that we write applications. Now, like any software, you can write applications um, in many different languages, and every software application really is unique. In our case, we've written a Twilio application that is entirely written in Salesforce Apex and is native in Salesforce using a combination of Apex and Visualforce. You could write a Twilio application that does phone calls and SMS, and you could use the Salesforce API to upload that data into Salesforce, but that's not what we do. We do not use the Salesforce API. Our application is running entirely in Salesforce, communicating with Twilio. Okay, so what else? One other thing I'm going to say before we sort of pop back over to Salesforce is, so here I am just logged into Twilio because I just wanted to show a few things here. Inside Twilio, we can provision phone numbers. And you'll notice that when we do provision phone numbers, you'll see that it says the phone number is managed by Twilio. There really is nothing that you're going to need to do in Twilio directly, and I'll show you how this is set up again in Salesforce, but there's really nothing that you're going to do in Twilio directly. We're doing all of that in Salesforce. All of the call data is going to go in Salesforce. This number provisioning is going to go in Salesforce. The only thing that you're going to see here when you do provision phone numbers for inbound, which is really optional, but if you do provision phone numbers in the application, you're going to see that they are managed by our application. And when you connect Twilio in Salesforce, we're creating a sub account or a connected account in Twilio. So when you first sign up for Twilio, you'll have a master parent account where you could do stuff, but our application is creating its own separate account. You're responsible for the Twilio billing will all roll up to that parent account, but everything that's happening in Twilio is being managed by Fastcall, just the billing responsibility is going up to you. And that's one area where our application is very unique in that we're using Twilio this way. We're not marking up the Twilio usage, and we're not hiding the fact that we're using Twilio. We really sort of enable that through the APIs. Let me show you how that works in Salesforce. We could pop back over here to Twilio if we need to. So back in Salesforce, we're making phone calls, if SMS, it's all sort of happening here. We're creating, we're logging all those calls as Salesforce tasks and activities. They're all here. with our duration and call results and subject and notes. We do have the option of recording calls, and you'll see that that call recording URL is also hosted by Twilio. So this is hosted by Twilio, but it's going to be in Salesforce. But let me pop into our settings because we're going to talk about Twilio, and inside of our fast call settings. And again, 100% of this is happening in Salesforce, so we're not leaving Salesforce to manage any of this. So underneath our admin settings here, we have connect with Twilio. And here's where we're doing that connection with Twilio. So the Twilio account is created. We come in here and we connect to Twilio. This is actually connected via OAuth, which is a security protocol. And we're going to show you inside of the Fastcall application that this was the parent account that I talked about a few minutes ago. This is the connected account SID. Everything that happens for Fastcall is happening in this connected account, but the parent account is where the billing happens. So if we ever do need to communicate with Twilio, we always just give them both account IDs, so they have both. We have a couple of useful links over here for Twilio, things that you might want to read about, international rights, which is another video that I'm going to talk about in another video. We do have about international rights, but all of this is really managed in Salesforce. In some countries, Twilio requires you to add an address. You could do that here, not in the US, but in some countries around the world. We can do that here. So there's really, again, nothing that you need to do, really with the exception of actually one step for the international rights for voice calls, what actually happened in Twilio. So this is that Twilio connection. There might be some instances where we may ask you to run a Twilio diagnostics to test your internet connection for the soft phone. When you're making a phone call, if Twilio has an error, we're going to present that in the application. For example, if you dial a wrong number, Twilio is going to say, hey, wrong number, or even a busy signal, a busy call. We're going to be passing all of that back to you in the application, but there's generally no reason to leave Salesforce or the Fastcall application. So let's just sort of go back over here to Salesforce. So I mentioned before, we're making our outbound calls, our SMS, and this is, again, just to sort of wrap up, this is all being enabled by Twilio. So the outbound call, we're sending those instructions over to Twilio to make the outbound call. Twilio is connecting the call. It's going across the public network infrastructure to terminate a call. That call might terminate on a cell phone, might terminate on a landline. We're going to dial this phone number here. Same thing with SMS. So both of the SMS and the telco is managed by Twilio. Every application in Salesforce has a telco component. You can't dial a phone call without a telco component. Each application handles that a little bit differently. We use Twilio, as I've sort of talked about. We connect via OAuth. We use the Twilio API. There are other applications in our category that are using more of a traditional telephony infrastructure. Some of that is using old-fashioned equipment that is installed locally. Twilio runs entirely in the cloud. And Fastcall has written an application that enables all of that in Salesforce. So the connection itself takes literally 2 or 3 minutes. One Fastcall is installed and set up. The whole thing takes a few minutes. It's all happening really behind the scenes. In Salesforce, there's really nothing that you need to do. We have had a couple of inquiries. Hey, do I need to run any applications? No, of course you don't have to run any applications. It's all done here. In Salesforce using Salesforce OpenCTI and our native application in Salesforce. I mentioned, and I know this demo is getting a little bit long, but I did mention before phone numbers. So phone numbers, these are the phone numbers that we're provisioning to Twilio. We have some recorded messages. These are also sort of managed with Twilio. And then, in essence, everything in our application, for example, our inbound interactive voice response is where we're sort of creating a series of commands to tell Twilio what to do. So, for example, you provision a phone number. We say to Twilio, hey, there's a phone number. That number call comes in. We want you to play a greeting, and then we want you to. So these are essentially, we are constructing the set of commands that we want Twilio to follow when a call comes in. Same thing is true with our voicemail drop. We're setting a set of commands to Twilio to enable our voicemail drop, to enable our call transfer, our listen in. These are all ways that we've constructed applications in Twilio, and you're managing all of that here in our admin settings to send a set of instructions off to Twilio. Great, so hopefully the video didn't go too long. If you have any questions, shoot us an email, support@fastcall.com. We hope that you found this instructive. We have some additional information both on our website, or you can pop over to Twilio's website to get some additional information. Thanks.